this is shifting the angle little bit. So that's okay, no? Because I'm looking at here and then थोड़ा सा slightly इधर उधर हो जाएगा.
So, so we are live right now, and I think and I think one of our colleagues is still joining us. Sadhika will be here any moment, but I think we can begin if we feel like.
Okay, looks like we can begin on this nice, what is it, Wednesday. One seems to have lost track of time, date, and everything because of how long-winded these elections were. Hello everyone who's joining us from the comfort of your homes or your offices or on your commute or wherever you are. This is a special live session we are doing at Behanbox with some of our reporters. And, basically the idea being we've covered these elections for the last, the election started mid-April, but we at Behanbox have been working towards it. If truth be told, from last November itself, making small, big, and massive plans, and finally, all of that has led to some awesome ground coverage that we did collectively at Behanbox, and we also looked at schemes and the performance of the government, the last government. But I just wanted to also set the context of today's life. The idea really is to not do a massive analysis of the results, or because I think a lot of that has happened and has been done very well from a lot of independent media who we've been following quite closely. The idea really is for us to do a little bit of analysis on why we thought we should at Behanbox cover elections from a feminist lens, and why that is necessary, not just for the biggest one of the biggest general elections that just happened, but also going forward, what that agenda might be looking forward in for the next 5 years. But also we wanted to do some personal reflections as reporters who have been tracking the government from the ground from a feminist lens, and also then set an agenda looking forward, hey, what are we going to do for the next 5 years? Because in India's democracy, election is never once in a 5-year thing, because we have 30 odd states, and every year at least 4 or 5 states are going into elections. And so for us, this really was a sort of a laboratory to understand how to cover elections from a feminist lens. But most importantly, why should gender issues be part of the political agenda? When we mean when we set out to when we started Behanbox, but also when we set out to cover these elections, the idea was that gender issues should not just be relegated to some sort of soft issue sort of thing, that anything affecting 50% of the country's population or any country's population should be at the heart of political decision making. And therefore, to combine and locate our government and our issues within this political context, and to do journalism really the old school way, but with a thrust on gender issues, was what we had set out to do. And while doing that, performance stock taking is definitely one of the things that any journalist does. But as a collective, we also felt that our job really was also to equip the woman voter, the queer voter, with resources, right, for proper decision making, whether it's first getting their names registered on the electoral rolls, to finding the right resources, to having the right information in their hands and on their fingertips, so that they're able to make the proper sort of electoral choice when they went into the booth. So all of these were some of the combined ideas with which we set out to do this election coverage. We are a small newsroom of about 8 people, and I really have to say, for someone this small, I do think that we really have managed to sort of push the boat out, and make a mark in how to cover elections, and why, most importantly, the why we need to cover elections from a feminist lens. So I think, as I woke up today morning, I mean, all day we, as a team, we tracked. We were, I think, glued to the to the election commission's website. There were some great moments where we had a collective squeal of delight. There were some not so great moments, but then, hey, those are all part of the elections. But when I woke up this morning, my colleague Shreya, she put together a document, looking at how many women have been elected, because that's what we all do anyway, at the end of the elections. So how many women did actually make it to the parliament? And looks like the number is down from 78 to 73 this time. So should we be disappointed about that? It's something we don't have definitive answers, but it's something that we do want to discuss, right? What we also want to discuss is the role that women's vote played in these elections, looking differently from how a woman's vote is always talked about, as oh, women turned up to vote. Did women's vote make a difference? And apart from all of the number analysis, what we want to probably understand from a lot of our reporters here, who've been on the ground, was that what did we see, and when we talked to women, as to what to them mattered, and how that was different from what political analysts outside or political parties were looking at, in terms of the women's franchise. So these are some of the issues, but I'll just quickly, and this is going to be a free flowing conversation, where we take stock of all these things. There'll be a lot of personal anecdotes and reflections of our time on the field, and for many of us, this was also the first election coverage really on the field as reporters. So that's very exciting as well. So I'll just quickly introduce the people that we have. They're all part of Behanbox. So we have Priyanka Tupe from, she's covered Maharashtra extensively, and also dabbled a bit into Gujarat this time, while also looking at some of the national issues. We have Shreya Raman. Shreya has been looking at data, but that's not all. Shreya covered Chhattisgarh, Bastar specifically. She did this very crucial, important report, which from Bastar on fake encounters, and something that the mainstream media had ignored at that point. And what we see now is large scale violence. Once again, I was reading a news report which said that some 4,000 odd people have fled Bastar now to different other parts, mainly Telangana and Andhra. And so Shreya covered Bastar and Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh, uh, uh, particularly, but she's done other things as well. Ankita is has been had looked at Delhi, where she's based. She'd also covered bits of Assam in her reportage, and she looked at contractualization and women's jobs, which is one of should have been a very big issue, and it did, in I believe it did at the end, at least, if not from analysts and political parties point of view, but as from a voter point of view, I do believe that women's jobs and employment must have played a really crucial role, and I have my reasons to say why, which I'll probably come later on. And I myself looked at covered a bit of Andhra, especially the northern and the more poorer part of Andhra, where the state was going both for assembly elections. They were electing a new government at the state, while also simultaneously voting for Lok Sabha. Some of our other colleagues who were will join as we go. Sadika covered parts of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, which looked at hate crimes, and while also doing one of our most popular series called Baisa Bisab. Some of our other reporters who are not part of Behanbox, but our friends and comrades. Aishwarya Manti covered Odisha. She looked at the 300-day scheme for Manrega, and so on and so forth. If I've left out anybody, I'll probably come to when I'm as we discuss. But Priyanka, let's start with you. Tell us how did you see the women's vote playing out in Maharashtra and Gujarat, where you've been on the ground?
Hi. Yeah, so in Maharashtra, I mean, if we look at electoral numbers, people are very happy. What I'm, seeing all the WhatsApp messages on all the or all the social media posts. So people are very happy the way results have come out. I think Shreya and everybody else would also agree. Uh, Women's votes, I mean, wherever we have gone and we covered the issues, specifically Amravati, Akola, and Yavatmal, from where we have covered Manarega story. So the only constituency where the ruling party's candidate is one is Akola. Yavatmal and then Amravati, the other candidates have won, who were, not really talking about the issue, but clearly the BJP and the NDA lost there. So, women's vote, I don't have the numbers right now exactly, like how many women from Maharashtra have voted. But I think the issues were, crucial. Inflation and the unemployment issue. There was a rage among women. There was a rage among women in Dharavi also, where we have covered a small video story. And they were talking about the housing issue, and they were talking about the other issues also. In Maharashtra specifically, there were lots of other issues along with, the welfare schemes. People were unhappy and disappointed about the party splits, the kind of Maharashtra's politics playing out for the past few years. So it's not like the only narrative about the development, or the key issues was a key role. There were also the local issues, like the party splits and other issues. People were clearly disappointed, and I think that has also played a key role, considering the numbers. Mahavikas Aghadi got like 30 seats out of 48 and one independent. So that's the huge victory. I mean, if we see the numbers, and seven MPs, seven women MPs from Maharashtra, they are, I guess, we can talk a little bit about them, at least their names. That Shobha Bachchao from Congress, she won Dhule constituency, and then Pratibha Dhanurkar from Congress, and there is Supriya Sule, we know, from Baramati, Praniti Shinde from Solapur, and Varsha Gaikwad. I mean, we should talk about her a little more, but she won her Mumbai North Central seat. And also, there are two BJP MPs from Maharashtra, like Raksha Khadse from Ravera and Smita Wag from Jalgaon. And yeah, so these are good numbers. Like, if we compare it, I was just looking at the data, how many women MPs were there in the last, elections. So yeah, clearly less than, the seven number. And also, some of the key women candidates, like Navneet Rana, like Pankaja Munde, they lost, their seats. So this is also is saying something about how, how voters have seen this election, and what are the issues for them. But yeah, I guess we can talk about it later. As of now, yeah, that's it from Maharashtra.
So I think one of the things that you mentioned, and one of my takeaways while also reporting from the ground, was how women are not just like voting mindlessly, just turning up and voting, and how we've never, even in our post-election analysis, we never asked, okay, what really swung the woman's vote, right? What you mentioned is a lot of jobs, unemployment, but also development issues affecting women, like the women you spoke to in Dharavi, about the Adani redevelopment project and what that means for women who constitute such a big economy of Dharavi, right? Or when I was reporting from Haryana or even Andhra, what I did see was jobs and unemployment, and also inflation, right? How these are such big issues, but somehow we reduce the woman's vote to the labhyarthi vote. Like, what do women feel important enough to be considered a beneficiary, and somehow that reduces the woman to be like an active voter who also thinks on a lot of these big issues as well, including local politics like splits in Maharashtra that you were talking about, and so on, as if women are incapable of thinking and making decisions on that count. So therefore, I'll go now to Shreya and ask, like, since we are talking about women as labhyarthis, and how, as far as I'm concerned, I did see a reversal of that role of women in these elections. And since you've covered a lot of schemes, mainly the Lakpati Didi scheme, right, in which also saw women as labhyarthis, and from a state where just last November, Madhya Pradesh, where you covered from, last November, the Ladli Behna and all of these schemes were said to be the game changers for the BJP government that got elected there. So how do you, Shreya, in your reportage from the ground, see this women's vote question and the reversal of this just beneficiary idea of women?
So I mean, I would like to start with saying what Priyanka is saying, that like the last year, wherever I have reported from, the distress has been very real and very acute, and that is something that has been true, be it Madhya Pradesh, be it Chhattisgarh, be it Maharashtra, also where I reported last year for some other stories, and the realization of that distress is very real among women, and that I think is what in this larger narrative of women voters, where we are looking at women as this homogeneous group of for voters, it is not really coming across is that what different groups of women want, and what, because I think what that we're trying to do with our inflation series also is right, where we're looking at how inflation affects women when we talk about employment, when we talk about income crisis. It's not really spoken, so women are spoken about in politics or when it comes to elections only in specific areas, right? And economic employment aspect doesn't come to that. But what I found through my reportage is that all of this is interlinked, and women understand these linkages way better than most people, and they do make decisions based on that. When it comes to schemes, like a Ladli Behna Yojana is like it's a scheme that worked. Like it's a scheme that worked tremendously for BJP. If you look at even like most women I spoke to spoke about how they're happy about it. That's because it's money in their account. It's a very real thing, right? When you get 1,000 rupee in your account, and that is what drives it. It is not about anything else, and I think women voters are smart like that, that if they get a benefit they see it, and if they don't they see that too. And I think that kind of understanding is still missing, where we are looked at where women are looked at this group that just votes like a chattel. Yeah.
I think from what you said, I had this data point from yesterday's analysis. Actually, it's something that we've seen a lot being talked about since yesterday on social media, and as to how these results reflect uh, the whole inequality, right? And how these excuse me, how these results also reflect the fact that it's the semi-urban, semi-rural, and rural India that really kind of made that shift from absolute power to what we see today for the government. And in some ways, it is a vote against the government, really, in many ways. So, and so here's a data point from the Hindu, which I picked up, which says that NDA's vote share in urban areas has been 52.8%, whereas which is up from 48% in 2019. In semi-urban, semi-rural, and rural seats, the vote share has actually declined for NDA. It's about anything between 40% to 44%, which is a decline from 42% earlier. So that's a big sort of indicator of the distress that we've been talking about, and the fact that women, as voters, who have significantly, in many states, they have actually trumped men as voters. That probably, I think, at some point when we get to the proper analysis, we'll probably be able to make sense of what role this did distress and inequality, etc., play out. I'll just quickly go to Sadhika and ask her, since you covered hate, right? And one of the things this elections has, if it has indicated anything, is a vote against hate. And many, as we are very fond of saying within Behanbox, that we've seen many hate mongering women also get out of the while electing new ones, voters showing them the door. So what role did, again, when we talk about hate and things like that, we don't see women as decision making blocks there. In your reportage, Sadhika, what have you seen? How has this aversion to hate played out in the places that you've been to? And what can we draw from that?
Correct. So Banu, actually, I feel what I'm about to say about hate is a larger trend that we see about a lot of other issues. In fact, to add to what Shreya was saying, 61 crore votes, if I'm 64 crore votes have been cast this entire election, out of which 34 were cast by women. So we're looking at nearly almost half, and that has never been the case, right? So I think politically women are not even looked at as a constituency which is being spoken to. We're usually spoken at, or we're used as a term to mention in election speeches, to write on boards, to be used as pictures on big hoardings. And that has what has been done for the longest time. And I think women voters have finally, I mean, I think we've been seeing through it for a while, but women have voted on those basis. Because if you actually see on the ground, especially in areas where, for instance, UP, we've seen how women have functioned, right? I mean, the policy, the schemes that they have, like Shreya was mentioning, the schemes that they have for women, very few of them are actually considering what their needs are. So when we talk about a lot of generic issues that should have been major talking points this election, like inflation, for instance, or even larger indicators when we talk about the hunger index, when we talk about maternity issues, when we talk about basic public health infrastructure and no community health centers and public health centers in villages, tier 2, tier 3 cities. These are things that, of course, affect men, but men are looking at the government from a more sociological point of view. Men are more politically, uh, men care about their political egos while casting their vote. And we've seen that as a trend, especially urban voters now. Whereas women are realizing that a lot of things that were supposed to work for them are not working for them. Also, I feel that over the last 5 years, a lot of factors, for instance, like Smriti Irani not speaking on the Hathras rape case, sentiments like these really, on some level, must have resonated with these women for them to have realized that not only is she a woman and your leader, your representative, but she's absolutely choosing to not do anything about it and not even speak about it. And this is just one such example of the larger attitude that this government has shown towards uh, things that actively impact women. We we have we talk about generic ideas, we talk about generic things that sound like feminist policies, or they sound like they're catering to women, but they're actually not. Ujjwala, for instance, has been around for years now. We all know what a big failure that has been. So exactly what impacts that woman sitting in the house, cooking on the chula, not having enough money to buy feed her children, not having enough money to buy sanitary napkins, not having enough safety, all of these things women realized were not being taken care of. And I feel on some level, the Congress manifesto also, or the constant mention of such or similar other things in all speeches, almost all speeches made by Rahul Gandhi or the India Alliance, sort of made women realize on some level that maybe that is an option. And probably, and we don't know yet if the where did the women vote lean. We just know that the government has not had the thumping majority that it was expected to have, and that nearly almost half the voters were women. So I don't think it's a far-fetched, I mean, so women did clearly play a role in voting this kind of politics out. And clearly, and I feel it does not actually surprise me. If you go to any village, we've all been on the ground, when you talk to these women, unlike most men, women don't talk about, or what we've been seeing on the internet in several other interviews and clips, women aren't really talking about issues like मोदी जी ने ये किया, हम मोदी जी को इसलिए वोट देंगे, मोदी जी हमको ऐसा फील कराते हैं. None of those conversations. Women are having very pointed conversations about what they wanted, what they didn't get, and what they expect. And maybe because they were really looking at that, that's how their vote also fell. But and I think it was the same with respect to hate. Hate was used as a specific tool to cater to the egos of the majority, to make them feel like they have a certain kind of impunity, to sell a certain kind of privilege to the majority. Which honestly, because women, I don't think that is what women in this country seek from the government. What we're asking for is very basic. It's what we've reported in our stories from across the 10 states. It's what we've seen in our individual coverage. These are not the things that women actively mentioned or even rewarded the BJP for. So I think hate exactly became one of those things where women were being affected by it, where women were facing the brunt of it. Women were also facing administrative neglect due to it. And at one point, they just realized that it is just simply something that does not serve them. It's absolutely irrelevant. I'd like to believe they saw through it, and I'd like to believe that out of that half, at least a considerable majority voted against it.
I would
Yeah,
just add something.
yeah.
Just one small thing. Like adding on to what Sadhika said about Ujjwala. The thing is, a lot of these schemes, like when we talk about this Labharti thing, also, a lot of the BJP schemes and policies have been a lot of talk, but not really any impact. So for women who are supposed to be beneficiaries of these schemes, they see that very clearly, because if there is no cylinder and if they don't have the money to buy another cylinder, and they are making food on firewood, they see that reality is not something that is missing from their eyes. And that's same with Lakpati Didi also. So much has been spoken about it, so many ministers spoke about it, but most women at that time knew nothing about this scheme. So when a scheme is spoken about a lot and doesn't really impact your day-to-day life, it doesn't come to their decision making, topics that they decide based on. So that is something I think is true. Like until and unless a scheme is actually beneficial, I don't know what is the point.
Also, women engage with these schemes, I feel, in a lot more intimate capacities than men do.
No, those are absolutely crucial sort of insights. Really, something again that analysts miss, because they tend to club all of women as one category, as one block, whereas we are all. We are multitudes, right? We are women. We are working women. We are non-paid working women. There are women in rural India, semi-urban India, women from in conflict zones, and so on and so forth. So it's to look at women's vote as this one block, and therefore say, oh, this is what would have swung or turned the vote, is a little far fetched, right? But I want to turn our attention to the young Indian woman, right, who kind of and Indian woman, when you think about a young Indian woman, you're almost always thinking urban India, right? Whereas the ones that we've spoken to at Behanbox, whether it's small town Haryana, small town Assam, and like all the 42 parliamentary constituencies where we went and spoke to young first time voters about what their aspirations were. I think for me, the one thing that came out over and over again was this aspiration for jobs, whether it is a government job, which was so big and still such a big thing to aspire for, and understandably so. uh, but the whole idea that job means freedom, job means bending of norms, a job means having all of these things that apart from the financial freedom and so on, is the whole idea of breaking away from how their position in the society is, has been like an eye-opening sort of an insight for me. Not that we did not know, but I think perhaps once given the chance and the platform, for women just kind of were no holds barred. Young women that I spoke to in Haryana. But also what was very interesting for me was also actually concerning, more than interesting, is that the more women aspire for these jobs, from the supply side, if you look at it, the jobs are not there, right? And the jobs that are there are going into contractualizing, into contractual labor, which makes this whole thing very, very precarious, right? On one hand, you have a whole swath of women wanting jobs to assert themselves, and on other, the government not being able to provide, or not just the government, everywhere, or not having the skills for it. um, Ankita did a wonderful story around the contractualization of labor, and it's something, contractualization of teaching workforce. But contractualization is something we are all seeing, and I think there needs to be more attention to that when we look at women's jobs. So Ankita, what was your takeaway looking at women's job scenario in some parts of India? At Benbox, we are very careful about homogenizing and making everything about a uniform about every state. And therefore, we'd like to talk about the areas that we know better than others. So therefore, we will always say the areas that we went to, or the regions that where we spoke to women. Ankita, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So from my work at looking at contractualization of jobs, I specifically looked at the teaching jobs and across the country, and especially with focus on Assam and Delhi, especially Assam because it has a sizable number of contractual teachers. And what we have found through our constant reportage at Behanbox is there's a rising trend of contractualization of work, especially at public sector enterprises, and this has only increased over the years. So, especially within the teaching workforce, while there are 95 lakh government teachers in our country, 6 lakh of them are on a contractual, employed on a contractual basis, and 55% of those are mostly women. So also see there's a trend of how women are being more employed in these very precarious sort of contractual jobs that we know have no social securities, have limited pay, and remain extremely precarious. And especially as Bhanu, as you pointed out, like you said, even your observation at Haryana, that women have been wanting to aspire towards government jobs. But the jobs that are available, from what we looked at, especially teaching jobs, which is under the central government. But within those schemes, we see the government is trying to completely pawn them off. And create contractual labor force within them. And we have seen this through our reportage across scheme workers, with Anganwadi workers, with ASHA workers, with other sorts of scheme workers. And this is a concerning trend. And this trend, especially, should be addressed, which I feel that the BJP government in the last 10 years has done nothing to do anything about it. The data shows that the trends have only gone worse. And I think the Congress in its manifesto had mentioned that it plans to abolish contractual labor, but we'll see how that goes and as uh, as the political scenario turns out. And the most interesting part about all this is that we have laws to regulate contractualization labor within our country, which is the contract labor law regulation and abolition. It is within its name which says abolition. And when you read the law, you will find that the whole point of that law is that contractual workforce exists, it should be regulated, and it should eventually be removed. It should be permanently absorbed. But we see none of that happening. Contractual workforce within the teaching sector, especially, is a violation of the right to education law. But it exists. All of this exists. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that I've noticed within my work, and especially within the education sector, there has been a increase in spending in school education, and within that, when we look at the data, spending to the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan has also increased, which is what pays these teachers within that labor force. And there has been increasing vacancies as well. But yet, teachers are not being absorbed in those permanent positions. Their wages have not been increased. Their wages are constantly delayed. Protests happen all over the country. And this is not just teachers, this is all scheme workers, as we have constantly been reporting, especially especially in the women's workforce. So those are mostly what I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Actually, I mean, the last 10 years, as you rightly pointed out, we've seen greater contractualization. And therefore, going forward, when we look at, as you all know, women and work is like a big area of our work. Everything we do somehow kind of tends to fall into that zone. But I think one of the things going forward that we need to look at is to situate. I'm sorry about my dog barking, but it's her walk time and she's really impatient. Or maybe she has something to say that I don't understand. We hear you, Rosa. So the point is that we need to keep an eye on these structures, because it's not like contractualization is happening on its own as some sort of a disparate sort of a thing, but it is a larger part of a neoliberal structure. And therefore, at Behanbox, as we've all been doing, we do not see anything as just one strand that somehow is happening on its own. What we try to make sense of, and this is where a constant look and vigilance is necessary when we look at policies as to the how these are shifting and how these are going to shift, whoever is in the government, right? And the one thing about these structures is that the more they get used to, the more they have been amended, the more they become pliable. Even very progressive governments get used to them. So therefore, as citizens, as journalists, we have to keep our eyes on these structures and point those holes in those things. And therefore, this larger political economy of jobs and employment, etc., with special look at contractualization, needs to be one of our focus areas as far as I'm concerned. But I'm happy to hear from everyone else. I just want to shift the gear a little bit and also talk about certain things that we saw, certain anecdotes as reporters on the ground. If I were to ask you, what is this one thing in the 2 months of reporting that you were part of, and that that while you were there, it stayed with you, and it struck you, it stayed with you, and it'll stay for the rest of your lives, as, hey, that was my highlight of reporting for 2024. historic, if I may say, elections. So let's start with you, Priyanka, again. What is that one thing that you would want to be
Yeah,
like? ये मेरा moment है.
yeah. I mean, sadly, those are, I mean, sad moments because of the kind of, disparity and the poverty and things we have seen on the ground. So when I went to report on the Manariga story in Vidarbha, so I remember those women. I'll never forget. I mean, some of the women we have quoted in our stories कि जिनके पास किताबें और बुक पेन खरीदने के पैसे नहीं क्योंकि उनको मनरेगा के पैसे वक्त पे नहीं मिले, 6-6 महीने से साल साल भर से उनको पैसे नहीं मिले। तो कल्पना मिरासे ने ऐसा बोला था, मैं उनको शायद जीवन भर कभी भूलूंगी नहीं। और जो माएँ थी जो बहुत दूर पश्चिम बंगाल हो या और स्टेट्स में हो, ओडिशा जैसे स्टेट्स में हो, वो माइग्रेट करना पड़ता है उनको। महाराष्ट्र जैसे प्रोग्रेसिव स्टेट से जब हम बैठते हैं मुंबई, पुणे जैसे शहर में, दिल्ली में भी हमें लगता है कि और है मतलब इन टर्म्स ऑफ इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट दैट महाराष्ट्र हैज़, वो है एक प्रोग्रेसिव शहर है। पर लेकिन अगर हम गाँव कस्बों में जाते हैं, थोड़ा-सा अपनी सिटीज़ को छोड़ के अलग-अलग जगह जाते हैं, तो पता चलता है कि ये यू करेक्टली सेड कि कोई होमोजेनियस पिक्चर नहीं है। कोई होमोजेनियस महाराष्ट्र का इमेज नहीं हो सकता कि बहुत ही इकोनॉमिकली प्रोग्रेसिव है, तो इसका मतलब यहाँ के सारे इश्यूज़ खत्म हुए, ऐसी बात नहीं है। गाँव कस्बों में जाते हैं तो पता चला। तो आई थिंक दैट हिट मी द मोस्ट कि छोटे-छोटे बच्चों को 1-1, 2-2 साल के बच्चों को भी इतने दूर छोड़ के, महाराष्ट्र में छोड़ के उनको इतना अलग स्टेट्स में जाके माइग्रेट करना पड़ता है। आज भी बॉन्डेड लेबर जैसी चीज़ें जो है वो हो रही है और वो वुमेन को मतलब अपने बच्चों से वो मिल भी नहीं पाती है। कितना इनह्यूमन है कि वो साल-साल, 2-2 साल अपने बच्चों से मिल नहीं पाते हैं। और बाकी बहुत चीज़ें हैं, जैसे कि हमने क्लियरली बाकी हमारे जो दर्शक हैं वो स्टोरी भी पढ़ सकते हैं वेबसाइट पर जाके कि कैसे जो मार्जिनलाइज्ड वुमेन हैं, चाहे वो एनटी-डीएनटी से हो, एससी से हो, मुस्लिम हो, दलित हो, वो कैसे, हम जब बात करते हैं वेलफेयर स्कीम्स और इन सब की कि क्या वो महिलाओं तक असल मतलब सही मायने में पहुँचती है कि नहीं। तो इसमें ये भी देखना चाहिए और वो आई थिंक हमने किया एंड आई एम हैप्पी अबाउट दिस कि वी एज़ अ बहनबॉक्स लुक्ड एट इट कि महिलाओं को ये स्कीम्स का लाभ नहीं हो रहा है, लेकिन कौन-सी महिलाएँ, हम किन महिलाओं की बात कर रहे हैं? उसमें भी जो इंटरसेक्शन है कि एससी, एसटी एनटी-डीएनटी कम्युनिटी की महिलाएँ हो, उनकी क्या हालत है? तो वो इम्पोर्टेंट था। बट एक और मुद्दा मैं शेयर करना चाहती हूँ कि अ, महाराष्ट्र में जिस तरीके से एंड मतलब वी से कि जहाँ-जहाँ हम गए वहाँ से हमने क्या देखा, महाराष्ट्र में मैंने विमेन को सिर्फ एज़ अ वोटर नहीं देखा और सिर्फ एज़ अ वोटर उन्होंने प्ले भी नहीं किया इस इलेक्शन में। क्योंकि चाहे सिविल सोसाइटी हो, चाहे निर्भय बनो जैसी सभाएँ हो, चाहे और अलग-अलग तरीके की एक्टिविटीज़ हो, चाहे छोटी-छोटी कॉर्नर मीटिंग्स हो, जिसमें संविधान बचाने की बात होती थी, जिसमें डेमोक्रेसी बचाने की बात होती थी। ऐसे इसमें मुझे लगता है एक बहुत ना सोशियोलॉजिकल चेंज भी आया है, शिफ्ट हो गया है। मैं ये नहीं कहूँगी कि वो बहुत रिवॉल्यूशनरी है, लेकिन वुमेन को ये लगना कि नहीं हमें डेमोक्रेसी बचानी है, उनको ये फ़ील होना कि हमें ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बचाने के लिए कुछ करना है। तो दैट मैसेज, दैट नैरेटिव वाज़ क्लियरली रीच्ड टू लाइक कॉमन वोटर्स आल्सो एंड स्पेशली वुमेन। महाराष्ट्र में वो बहुत उभर के आया। और जो विमेन है, हमने उसके ऊपर एक छोटी स्टोरी भी की है कि किस तरीके से जो ऑपोजिशन पार्टी के जो विमेन थे, उनके अंडर एक सॉलिडारिटी फॉर्म होना, जो पहले एक दूसरे को, मैं ये नहीं कहूँगी एज़ अ एनिमी, बट एक दूसरे को एज़ अ कॉम्पिटेंट देखते थे। कांग्रेस हो, शिवसेना हो, बाकी पार्टी के विमेन हो। जब वो महाविकास आघाड़ी एक जो कोalition है उसके अंडर और ब्रॉडर लेवल पे इंडिया ब्लॉक, इंडिया अलायंस, उसके अंडर जब काम कर रहे थे, तो आई हैव सीन कि वो बहुत एक एकजुटता, सॉलिडारिटी से काम कर रहे थे और सबके लिए एक ही मकसद था कि हमें मतलब इंडिया अलायंस के लिए, महाराष्ट्र के तौर पे महाविकास आघाड़ी के लिए हमें काम करना है, बाकी सब बाद में देखा जाएगा। बट एट दिस मोमेंट आवर प्रायोरिटीज टू सेव द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एंड सेव द डेमोक्रेसी। जब हमने धारावी की महिलाओं के साथ एक वीडियो किया था, तो उसमें भी महिलाएं ये बोल रही थी और मतलब बहुत प्रोमिनेंटली उसका जिक्र हो रहा था। उनके अपने-अपने इश्यूज़ तो है ही, धारावी की महिलाओं का, मुंबई की महिलाओं का हाउसिंग का इश्यू है, बाकी सारे तमाम इश्यूज़ हैं। लेकिन ये बहुत प्रोमिनेंटली उभर के आया और वुमेन इसके लिए सिर्फ़ ऐसे नहीं कि घर पे मैं बैठी हूँ और मुझे लग रहा है कि संविधान बचाना है और मैं सिर्फ़ व्हाट्सएप पे स्टेटस डाल रही हूँ। हालाँकि वो भी कोई कम इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है, मैं बाइनरी में नहीं देख रही हूँ कि अच्छा-बुरा, लेकिन एक एक्टिव पार्टिसिपेशन होना, मतलब रास्ते पे निकल के आना, छोटी छोटी सभाओं में जाना और कॉन्स्टेंटली एंगेज होते रहना ऑन द ग्राउंड ऑल्सो एंड ऑन सोशल मीडिया नैरेटिव्स ऑल्सो। सो उसमें विमेन का बहुत बड़ा पार्टिसिपेशन है। मुंबई का जो वोटिंग 20 मई को हुआ, उसके पहले, बिल्कुल पहले, जो एक लास्ट परिवर्तन सभा थी बीकेसी पे, इंडिया अलायंस की, तो मैंने देखा था उसमें काफी मुस्लिम महिलाएं आई थी। मैंने अपने जीवन में कभी नहीं सोचा था कि शिवसेना के रैली में, हालांकि वो महाविकास आघाड़ी की रैली थी, लेकिन शिवसेना उसमें एक बड़ा प्लेयर है, शिवसेना उद्धव ठाकरे गढ़ जो है वो, तो उसमें मुस्लिम महिला इतनी तादाद में दिखेगी, बहुत एविडेंटली दिखेगी। मैंने कुछ लोगों से बात भी की थी। तो दलित मुस्लिम विमेन हो, मुस्लिम विमेन हो, वो उनका इस तरीके से एक जो एक ऑपोजिशन है, एक कोalition है, उसके साथ जुड़ जाना, इंडिया अलायंस के साथ जुड़ जाना, ये भी मुझे लगता है बहुत कुछ कहता है। और इसके लिए अभी हमें तो घाई नहीं करनी चाहिए बिल्कुल, बट ये ऑब्जर्वेशन तो हम प्राइमरी ऑब्जर्वेशन तो नोट कर सकते हैं, एंड बाकी बाद में उसका एनालिसिस कर सकते हैं कि व्हाट मेड मुस्लिम women टू you know vote for Shiv Sena or to join these rallies and all that. Yeah, but वो एक observation मुझे लगता है important है रखना. Yeah.
I just want to quickly add to what Priyanka was saying. Interestingly enough, if we see the Dalit OBC vote, the tribal forest belt vote has not gone to the BJP, and we know that as a matter of fact. And if we look not just over the last 10 years, but also historically, women have been at the forefront of a lot of these tribal and forest rights protests. So we, especially in the Chota Nagpur belt and in the northeastern parts of the country, a majority of these issues, small little things from minor forest produce, what are how do our forest laws allow tribal people to enter the forests, gather things off the ground, sell them, things that they've been doing for the last 100 years. These are small little things that have been ignored for a really, really long time. Forest Rights Act has been around since 2006. And especially because women are very relevant in these economies also, uh, naturally, I mean, especially from the Chota Nagpur belt and from Northeast, we all know the biggest, the most popular activists, people who work the hardest for the longest time, a majority of them are women on the ground. Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Jharkhand, and we know these women and they've been doing such consistent work. So I think when that, especially when we look at an increase in the number of women votes and a decrease in the number of votes for the BJP from this specific belt, I feel the fact that women have been the at the front of these movements also must have played a role, precisely adding on to what Priyanka was saying, you know. So it's not just a Maharashtra specific trend, but we're seeing that uh, women have, so in those like to, you know, coming back to the point that I was making much earlier, this is this kind of connect that we're able to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's always missed out when, it's so important to draw out these connections because we again look at women as very, in their very little small roles at that point, like women as a voter, women as a, I don't know, women as a job seeker, or women as a, but the fact that these are all so interlinked and primarily among them, and something that's always fascinated me personally, but also collectively for all of us at Behanbox is the woman as a resistor, right? Like they are part of such big resistance movements, small, big, medium, local, national, international, if you like, and therefore, from to see all of these resistance movements as part of a political sort of a landscape and one that affects political decision making as we are seeing now, right? Is a very, very significant sort of an insight, and one that I hope we are all able to take away as a significant insight to build on, especially when we do a lot of our future reportage work. It's a lesson for us, but also a lesson for everyone else, that when you look at women as a category, you've got to see all of these multitudes and make those essential links, because like Priyanka was saying, the fact that Kalpana Mirase has to migrate is a reality. As far as to Odisha, where the scheme is not working for someone like her, is as true as the fact that a Muslim woman it has, or Muslim women came together and said, hey, we are going to save the constitution, even if it means joining hands with Shiv Sena in that moment in history, and so on. So these are all realities that exist, right? And how do we see the link between these realities is a very interesting sort of. Speaking of resistance, I think this is the right moment to go to Shreya, because I remember she called me from Bastar, and she said, hey, I am off to report on something significant. I won't be reachable. That's all we got to know from her. And I told her, but who are you going with? Are you going with someone credible, someone sort of? And she said, oh, yes, I'm going with Sori and Bela Bhatia and all. So I was like, okay, go. But that so Shreya firsthand saw what the kind of resistance that we've been hearing about, but also something very concerning that is developing in Bastar, something that we all should keep an eye on more and more as we go along. But Shreya, I don't mean to say that, but tell us what your takeaway, something that will stay with you.
See, I think for me, I have been reporting on public policy for 7 years almost, and it's always looked at in a boring way, right? Like it's a boring thing, right? But the thing, I think, what really struck me during this reportage, be it Madhya Pradesh or be it Chhattisgarh, as I travel through both the states, is that the only reason why this result has happened is because of the structural dismantling of policy that was getting people to not be poor, be it a narega or be it forest rights act also. I think those kind of linkages like you're speaking about, the reason what is happening in Bastar right now, where there are a lot of fake encounters, there are uh, 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 violence against Adivasi people living there, in the garb of fighting Maoist insurgency. So what is happening is it's a fight for resources, right? And there are what is more concerning is that there are so many violations of Forest Rights Act. Gram Sabha consent is not being taken. And these are the issues, even like what Sadika was saying about the minor forest produce. It is up to 40% of a tribal household's income. And even if it's not income, it provides a lot of sustenance. And what I saw in Madhya Pradesh is what we will see, as a future scenario, right? Where there are no forests left. The place I went to in Bardwani, it used to be lush forest, area where people told me that they only go out to buy salt and clothes, and that's the only thing they needed. But now you need to buy everything, and that creates a livelihood crisis, because um, if you need to buy everything, you need money, and for money you need a job, and that's the livelihood crisis that is being created because Forest Rights Act is not being implemented the way it should be. So a lot of these schemes that came around 2005, around, be it a right to education, be it right to information, be it Forest Rights Act, be it Narega, they're all linked, and they all together created this system that protected people. Because this is very well known, I think, for decades, that even though you get poverty levels in India, but a significant chunk of Indian population is at right around that poverty line, right? Like one emergency away from becoming poor. And this is the kind of social security net that was preventing that. But what BJP, I mean, especially with Narega, when it came, it was one of the main reasons where daily wage labor increased, right? Significantly, because Narega set a minimum wage limit. And so when Narega has been systematically dismantled, this shows its impact in migration, like Priyanka's story says. So all of these policies are linked. And what my takeaway is that the reason this election has happened is because BJP didn't sit down and do its homework with policy and ensure that good policies which ensure people have a good life um, are coming across or are being implemented well. And I think that is also my hope looking forward, like whoever forms the government, since it's not it'll be a coalition government no matter what. at least the process of policy making, we'll see a vibrant Lok Sabha, we'll see more debates. There won't be, acts passed in a day, things like that. So I think that gives me hope.
I think,
I think I
this,
agree with that.
yeah, go
No,
on,
please,
Sadhika.
please go ahead. No, no. I was just
No,
no,
I could see a smile on everyone's faces because all these things that Shreya was speaking about, vibrant democracy, and acts being passed, discussed, debated. There'll be standing committees, and there'll be a speaker who will allow people to speak, and things that we take so much for granted in a democracy कि ये तो होगा ही, इसको कौन बदल सकता है, is something today we are taking away as some sort of a, oh wow, this is going to happen, right? And therefore, I mean, Shreya, and for the rest of us, I think we've got a very little time left. So I really want to
yeah.
pick up on what Shreya said to talk about how do we look at this future, right? Going ahead. I mean, see, this year we have Haryana elections, we have Maharashtra elections, we have Delhi elections, and there will be a new government, and all of that. But what, as reporters and as Behanbox, do you think we should be what, as we have set a sort of an agenda in election reporting, what kind of an agenda, if you were sort of you were looking at, would you like to set for us as a collective कि हम कैसे आगे के 5 साल हमें क्या करना चाहिए, और हम क्या, ऑडियंस हमसे क्या उम्मीद रख सकती है. Sadhika, let's start with you.
I think because we've got very little time left. Quickly, I feel that the one major important thing, something that we try to do through our work, we have always been doing, and what this government will also have to know, is not address women as unintelligent beings who can be easily manipulated and influenced. You can't say women, you can't say Matru Shakti, Nari Shakti, and expect the votes to come to you. They will not. So you need to think, you need to talk to women. Even exit poll numbers, I have a feeling, went wrong because pollsters never talk to women. Pradeep Gupta on the exit poll day was found saying that, okay, I should have spoken to more women, didn't speak to women. Exactly. So nobody's speaking to women. That is one thing that we have been doing, we will continue doing, because which is why I said 245 for UP. Sorry, I said 45 seats in UP like 2 months ago, because we were speaking with women, and I think that is one thing that we need to continue doing.
Right. Priyanka, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I was laughing when Shreya was saying about policy because that clearly is the thing. I was looking at the Parliamentary Affairs website and I was seeing the bills were literally passed in 2 3 days, like very important bills related to environment and tribal affairs and all those ministries and even home ministries to within 2 3 days without even having proper discussions around it, proper debate around it. So I think policy is the key thing, takeaway. And how अभी तक जिस तरीके से हमने वेलफेयर स्कीम्स जो है लोगों तक पहुंच रही की नहीं है, एंड विद द इंटरसेक्शंस ऑफ वुमेन एंड ऑल, आई मीन अदर, आई मीन ऑपोजिट जेंडर कैटेगरीज की उनको क्या मिल रहा है कि नहीं मिल रहा है, तो वो हमें इंश्योर करना चाहिए आगे के भी असेंबली इलेक्शंस में. दैट इज द रियली, आई मीन, चेक ऑन द गवर्नमेंट्स एंड, आई मीन, या सिस्टम्स की वो उसका क्या हो रहा है.
Okay, so as we are running out of time, and Shreya has already set the policy context, and I think as someone who loves policy, Shreya is, I know this is going to be what she's going to be doing as well. Make policy less boring, more interesting, and look at it within the political context and not outside of it. And so, therefore, I think this is just the right moment for me to now reiterate our own vision that all of what has been talked about by everyone here is the kind of a collective vision. Behanbox operates not as one person's whatever. It's a collective vision that we all envisage. But to me, the one thing that I feel that we will continue to do is eternal vigilance, because if one thing that 5 years or last 10 years has taught us is that eternal vigilance is the price one pays for being a democratic citizen. And now that, hey, we have reclaimed our democracy in small big ways. It is time to secure it and embolden it and make it very gender just, and that one that works for everyone, one that is feminist in the true sense of the term, one that heralds equality in ways that our founders of our constitution, Dr. Ambedkar and others, have really sort of envisioned it as the founding principle of our document. And as we are about saving the constitution, uh, gender justness and gender focus has to be the cornerstone of this part of saving the constitution. So thank you all for your tremendous work, which dare I say has just only begun. We have lots more to do, and we have lots more to give, and we have lots more to keep our eyes on. But for the moment, I think all of us need a good break, good breathing time before we get on to the next set of, keeping democracy in check sort of activities. But thank you all, and thank you to all our viewers for all your support through the process, through the election time, and for sending us such nice, encouraging messages that really kept our spirits up and high. I also do want to take a moment to thank everyone else at Behanbox. You don't see them on the screens here, but we couldn't do without them. So a big thank you to Glenissa, who's been handling all of this in the most seamless manner. All our lovely illustrations that you have been seeing across for since the elections began is thanks to this very young, amazing anti-caste feminist illustrator Urvi. We've had wonderful interns who worked with us through the process: Pranjali, Suruchi, Nisha, and and Rehmat. Oh my God, Rehmat, who was part of this process. Thank you all very, very much for all of your work. And none of our stories would be what they are if it weren't for Malini, who is our editor. So all the lovely work you see is Malini's sort of shaping it into whatever. And if you have noticed that we have moved from text to videos, that's all thanks to a wonderful editor that we have, who chooses to be anonymous for the moment. And therefore, a big thanks to them. You know who you are, and we couldn't do without you. So thank you all very, very much. And uh, oh yes, her name is Karina Khan. Should you be very interested to know who she is? But thank you all very much once again, and and here's three cheers to democracy. And it's flag flying high. Thank you all.
And I'd also like to thank Rosa for joining us.
Yes, well, she's a very important voice.
Valuable
Uh,
opinion.
yes, yes, very important voice. And as you say, as you know, we are all very inclusive. So humans, any
Yeah.
other species, everyone who has a voice finds a platform here. Thank you all
And
very much.
especially anyone with that lovely name.
Yeah, Rosa.
Anyone with that lovely name. Well, she's a mix of Parks and Luxembourg, so she
Oh,
can yeah. So very left. She's Red Rosa, by the way.
oh.